In the early morning of June 30th, 2013, on a pristine island locally known as Luyu, officially named Dezhou Island, situated at the mouth of the Shantou Port in Guangdong Province, China. This was an uninhabited island, with only the presence of a few staff members from the Maritime Safety Administration who monitored the shipping channels day and night. A strange floating object caught their attention. It had a most peculiar shape, an ordinary travel suitcase, but it was imprisoned inside an incredibly sturdily welded iron cage. The entire structure was made from thick steel bars, encasing the suitcase like a mobile tomb. Floating suitcases were not uncommon, but one locked tightly within an iron cage like this was something they had never witnessed before. Recognizing the unusual and serious nature of the situation, the maritime staff immediately called the Mayu Border Post of the Longhu Sub-bureau, Shantou City Public Security. Border police forces arrived at once to secure the scene. As the staff moved the object ashore, a pungent, foul odor, characteristic of organic decomposition, began to spread through the air. Upon receiving the report, the criminal investigation team from the Longhu Sub-bureau also quickly arrived. Seasoned investigators began their preliminary examination. First, they focused on the object's structure. The iron cage was made from steel pipes, the type commonly used in construction or for water pipelines. The welds were somewhat crude but extremely strong. What was noteworthy was the cage's dimensions, its length, width, and height, which perfectly fit the suitcase inside. It was not a ready-made cage, but seemed to have been custom-made, tailor-fit for this very suitcase. Second, to ensure it was secure, the perpetrator had also used multiple iron chains wrapped tightly around the suitcase, then fixed them to the cage with two large padlocks. The purpose of these actions was all too clear. The culprit not only wanted to dispose of the suitcase, but also intended to use the weight of the cage, chains, and locks to sink it to the bottom of the deep sea, permanently erasing all traces. All speculation had to be verified. The authorities decided to open the suitcase right there at the scene. Those present offered various theories. Perhaps it contained contraband, drugs, or maybe someone was performing a strange sea burial ritual for a beloved pet, like a Tibetan mastiff. Similar cases, though rare, had occurred before. Investigators cut off the two padlocks one by one. The chains were removed. Forensic expert Gao Feng, who was in charge of the examination, carefully pulled the suitcase out of the iron cage. The moment the suitcase zipper was opened, the air seemed to thicken. The overpowering stench of death assaulted the nostrils of those standing closest. And then the most horrifying truth was laid bare. Inside the suitcase were the dismembered remains of a human being. The body had been intentionally dismembered and arranged neatly inside. Specifically, there were a total of 3 blocks of human remains. This was clearly a case of homicide, followed by cruel acts to conceal the victim's identity and dispose of evidence. The case was officially established. But a series of baffling questions immediately arose, challenging the investigation team. The first and biggest paradox was, if the killer's goal was to sink the suitcase permanently, why did it float to the surface and drift ashore? The answer lay in the laws of nature, a factor the killer had failed to anticipate. According to experts, after being submerged in water for an extended period, the decomposition of the soft tissues inside the body generates a large amount of gas, mainly methane and hydrogen sulfide. This gas accumulated inside the sealed suitcase, causing it to inflate like a balloon. The buoyant force created by this gas gradually increased. At some point, this force exceeded the total weight of the suitcase and iron cage structure, causing it to slowly rise from the seabed, float, and drift with the ocean currents. It was the southeastern wind and the high tide of that day that brought this crucial piece of evidence to the shores of Dezhou Island, exposing the crime to the light of day. The second question, where did this suitcase come from? Dezhou Island is located at the confluence of the inner Shantou Port and the vast open sea. There were 2 main possibilities. The first was that the killer had thrown the suitcase into one of the 3 major rivers that flow into the Shantou estuary, the Han River, the Rong River, or the Lian River. It then drifted downstream to the sea. If this hypothesis was correct, the investigation would focus on the cities through which these 3 rivers flow, including Jieyang, Chaozhou, and Meizhou. The second possibility was that the suitcase was dumped directly into the sea in another area, possibly from an offshore vessel, and was then pushed here by the complex currents of the South China Sea. If so, the search area would expand to a massive maritime region, stretching from Zhangzhou in Fujian Province to the north to Shanwei in Guangdong Province to the south. This would make the investigation incredibly difficult, like finding a needle in a haystack. To determine the direction of the investigation, the police consulted veteran fishermen who had spent their entire lives on these waters. Most of them believed that, given the area's currents, it was more likely that the suitcase had drifted from the upper reaches of the rivers. The investigation team decided to temporarily prioritize the first hypothesis, but did not rule out the second. While investigators were narrowing down the primary scene, in the forensic lab, expert Gao Feng and his team were racing against time. A detailed autopsy was conducted with urgency and meticulous care. After a comprehensive examination, an initial forensic report was completed with more specific information. The victim was identified as a female. The estimated age was narrowed down more precisely to around 22 years old. Her height was approximately 1.60 meters. The post-mortem interval, PMI, or the time of death and submersion, was determined to be between 20 days and 1 month. Traces of red nail polish were found on her fingernails, a small detail suggesting the victim paid attention to her appearance. And then, two extremely important clues, two details that could turn the entire case around, were discovered. The first clue was a tattoo. On the victim's left thigh was a tattoo with a very unique and unusual design. It did not resemble common tattoo patterns. The design was a stylized blend of a civet cat and a sea creature resembling a walrus. This was an invaluable personal identifying feature. If someone could recognize this tattoo, the victim's identity would be revealed. The second clue, and the most groundbreaking discovery, was found during the autopsy. The forensic team discovered a pair of silicone gel objects. These two objects were identical in color, size, shape, and weight. The forensic experts immediately identified them as medical-grade implants, the type of specialized material used in cosmetic breast augmentation surgery. From these two golden clues, a clearer portrait of the victim emerged. She was a young woman, about 22 years old, fashionable, who cared about her beauty and had undergone cosmetic surgery. With these initial sketches of the victim, a large-scale search was launched. The initial focus was on the city of Shantou itself. Teams went through household registration records and sifted through every missing person report from the past few months. But the results were met with silence. In the entire Shantou area, no missing person case matched the profile they had. The scope of the investigation had to be expanded. Based on the theory that the suitcase had drifted from upstream, the police turned their attention to the major cities along the Han, Rong, and Lian rivers. Teams of detectives were sent to Jiang, Chaozhou, and even the distant Meizhou. But the answer was still a resounding zero. There were no reports of a young woman with a civet cat tattoo who had undergone cosmetic surgery and disappeared within the last month. On the morning of July 1st, 2013, just one day after the discovery of the case, good news came from the technical department. After a night of tireless effort, experts had successfully cleaned and recovered extremely valuable information printed on the pair of silicone implants. Despite being submerged in salty seawater for a long time, the durable silicone shell had preserved these crucial characters almost perfectly. Specifically, there were 3 lines of information on each implant. The first line was an English word, Nagor. This was the brand name of the product. The second line was a technical specification, including letters and numbers describing the physical properties of the product. And the third line, the most important one, was a unique series of numbers. This was the production batch number, a kind of ID card for the product. At 10 a.m. on July 1st, without wasting a minute, investigators took their questions and the crucial evidence to a reputable cosmetic hospital in Shantou for consultation. There, they met with Hospital Director Sun Jie, a leading expert in the field. After carefully examining the evidence, Director Sun Jie provided invaluable information. He explained the meaning of each line of text in detail. The Nagor brand was a famous breast implant brand from the United Kingdom. It was a high-end product not sold widely. The second line of technical specifications indicated the projection of the implant, meaning its thickness after being implanted. And most importantly, he confirmed that the last series of numbers was indeed the production batch number. He affirmed, if this product was imported through official channels, then through this batch number, the distribution company can absolutely trace which medical facility it was sold to, and even when. Director Sun Jie also added that in China, the sole and exclusive distributor of the Nagor brand was headquartered in Wuhan, Hubei Province. The path forward became clearer than ever. With the help of the cosmetic hospital, the investigators immediately contacted the distributor in Wuhan. On the other end of the line, after receiving the information about the batch number 091294, the distributor's staff quickly searched their database. The result came back almost instantly. This batch was imported by them in early 2013. In total, there were over 50 pairs of products from the same batch. Through their sales management system, they determined that 29 pairs from this batch had been distributed to hospitals and cosmetic clinics across the country. 29 pairs of implants meant 29 potential customers. The police's task now was to coordinate with the distributor to get a list of those 29 medical facilities and then review all the information of the people who had used this product. Finally, on the afternoon of July 2nd, after nearly 2 days of relentless searching, an unusual piece of information surfaced like a flash of light in the dark. One of the 29 facilities, a cosmetic hospital in the city of Zhuhai, Guangdong Province, provided a detail that caught the investigators' special attention. They reported that during their recent routine customer care follow-ups, they had been unable to contact a female client. All attempts to call or message her via social apps received no response. This loss of contact, in the context of a murder investigation seeking an unidentified victim, became a huge point of suspicion. A team was immediately dispatched to Zhuhai. Their mission was clear: to verify why this female client had become unreachable. Was it a random coincidence, or was she the person they had been searching for all along? In Zhuhai, the investigators went to the cosmetic hospital and met the doctor who had personally performed the surgery. The doctor provided the complete file of the unreachable female client. Her name was Lily. The file recorded that she had used the exact Nagor breast implants, 220mm volume, and most importantly, from the production batch with the number 91294. All the information matched perfectly. The doctor also reconfirmed his concern. I tried calling her many times but couldn't get through. Her social media accounts like QQ and WeChat have also shown no activity. This is very strange. The suspicion grew. Using the phone number from the medical record, investigators contacted Lily's family. The person who answered was her older sister, Ting Ting. When she heard the police explain about a case and ask about Lily's situation, Ting Ting became extremely worried and confirmed that the family had also lost contact with Lily for some time. An investigator asked a pivotal question. Before the surgery, did Lily have any special identifying marks, for example, a tattoo? Ting Ting answered immediately, "Yes, my sister has a tattoo on her thigh. It's a very special cat design." The police asked Ting Ting to send them a photo where the tattoo was clearly visible. A few minutes later, a photo arrived. On the computer screen, technicians placed the image provided by Ting Ting next to the photo of the tattoo taken from the victim's body. The match was undeniable, from the lines, the shape, to the location. At this point, the police could be 90% certain that the victim was Lily. To obtain an official and legally sound conclusion, the Shantou police sent a formal request to the Public Security Bureau of Luyu City, Guangxi Province, Lily's hometown, to assist in collecting blood samples from her parents for DNA testing. The DNA analysis report confirmed a direct biological relationship between the genetic samples from the victim's body and those of Lily's parents. All doubts were erased. The victim in the floating suitcase was indeed Lily, a 22-year-old girl from Luyu, Guangxi. Once Lily's identity was confirmed, the investigation entered a new phase, reconstructing the life and final days of the young woman. Lily, at 22, was at the prime of her life with a bright future ahead. Who could have been so cruel as to end her life, and what motive led to such a brutal act? Through the accounts of friends and family, a detailed picture of Lily gradually emerged. She was a beautiful girl, passionate about fashion, and always longed for a better life. To realize that dream, she had left her hometown in Beiliu, Guangxi, for glamorous cities like Zhuhai and Shenzhen. There, Lily worked as a freelance model. She paid special attention to her appearance, considering it her livelihood and a source of pride. Lily did not hesitate to spend large sums of money on beauty treatments. Her best friend, a girl named Xiaobai, recalled that Lily had undergone no fewer than 5 or 6 major and minor cosmetic surgeries, all performed at the same hospital in Zhuhai. Her obsession with beauty and perfection seemed to have become an inseparable part of her life. To afford her luxurious lifestyle and expensive surgeries, Lily needed a stable source of income, and the person supporting her was her boyfriend, Hao Kun. Hao Kun was a Hong Kong businessman with very good financial standing. He doted on Lily, sparing no expense to meet all her requests, from expensive designer goods to the costs of her costly cosmetic surgeries. In the eyes of their friends, they were a perfect couple, a beauty and a tycoon. However, as investigators dug deeper into Lily's relationships, they discovered that her love life was not as simple as it appeared. Behind her relationship with the wealthy boyfriend Hao Kun, Lily had another secret. Xiaobai, her best friend, revealed a shocking piece of information. About a month before she disappeared, Lily had met another man online. His name was Luo Min from Fujian. Although they only knew each other through the virtual world, the feelings between Lily and Luo Min developed rapidly. Luo Min also proved to be very generous. Xiaobai recounted an instance where Luo Min had directly transferred 50,000 RMB, approximately 8,000 USD, into Lily's account. A complex love triangle had formed. On one side was Hao Kun, her official, wealthy boyfriend who provided for her material life. On the other was Luo Min, the new lover who brought her new emotions and was no less generous. Lily seemed to be torn between the two men. She once confided in Xiaobai that she intended to break up with Hao Kun to be with Luo Min officially. The existence of this love triangle immediately placed both Hao Kun and Luo Min at the top of the suspect list. Criminal psychologists opined that cases where victims are brutally mutilated post-mortem often stem from deep-seated emotional conflicts, from jealousy and hatred reaching an extreme. The hypothesis was raised: could Hao Kun have discovered his girlfriend's infidelity and, in a fit of jealous rage, murdered her? Both men in Lily's life had potential motives. The investigation immediately shifted focus to verifying the alibis and movements of Hao Kun and Luo Min. A secret and comprehensive investigation into Hao Kun and Luo Min was launched. Detectives checked all data related to them, from call histories and text messages to immigration records, travel schedules, and hotel stay data. However, the results of the investigation were beyond everyone's expectations. For Luo Min, the online lover, police discovered that during the entire period Lily was determined to be missing, he was traveling abroad with his family. He had plane tickets, customs entry, and exit stamps, photos, and overseas spending receipts. Luo Min's alibi was irrefutable. He had absolutely no opportunity to commit the crime. For Hao Kun, the official boyfriend, the results were even more surprising. Data from the Exit and Entry Administration showed that Hao Kun had flown abroad for business on June 7th, the day before Lily went missing. He only returned to China after receiving a call from Xiaobai reporting that Lily was unreachable. This meant that at the time of the crime, Hao Kun was not in the country either. He too was cleared from the list of suspects. The two biggest suspects, the two with the clearest motives, both had solid alibis. The promising investigative angle of a crime of passion had completely collapsed. While the investigation seemed to have hit a dead end, another team specializing in financial and digital data analysis discovered a highly unusual detail. When checking the transaction history of Lily's bank accounts, they noticed something inexplicable. Lily was confirmed to have gone missing on June 8th. But after that date, her bank card continued to be used. Specifically, 3 cash withdrawals were made at ATMs in Shenzhen. The first transaction occurred at 12:53 p.m. on June 22nd. The amount withdrawn was 20,000 RMB. The second transaction occurred at 12:51 a.m. on June 26. The amount withdrawn was also 20,000 RMB. The third transaction occurred at 5:56 p.m. on July 2nd. The amount withdrawn was 19,000 RMB. In total, 59,000 RMB had vanished from Lily's account after she had died. This raised a big question. The victim was murdered, so how could money still be withdrawn from her account? Who did this? It certainly couldn't have been a random person who found the card, because withdrawing money from an ATM requires a password. And a password is top secret personal information. Thus, the person using this card was very likely the murderer or someone directly involved in the case. He not only killed Lily, but also stole her assets. This clue opened up a completely new line of investigation, tracking down the mysterious withdrawer. Warrants to retrieve surveillance footage from the 3 ATM locations were immediately executed. When the videos were sent back, investigators watched them over and over dozens of times, not missing a single frame. At first glance, the 3 men in the 3 videos appeared completely different. In the video from June 22nd, the man wore a full-body raincoat, a hat, a face mask, and glasses. In the video from June 26th, he appeared in a stranger guise. His head was wrapped in thick gauze as if he had been seriously injured. And in the video from July 2nd, he wore a simple white t-shirt, but constantly kept his head down and made exaggerated facial expressions, deliberately contorting his mouth. However, no matter how clever the disguise, he still left fatal flaws that only professional eyes could spot. After careful analysis and comparison of the 3 videos, investigators discovered undeniable commonalities. First, in all 3 instances, the man wore the same pair of distinctive, black-framed glasses. Second, and the most telling detail, a small adhesive bandage was stuck to the bridge of his nose on all 3 occasions. Third, his gait and body movements, despite his attempts to change them, still showed similarities. Particularly, in the final withdrawal, his deliberate attempt to uglify his face backfired. One investigator commented, "That act was too dramatic, too artificial. When someone tries to hide something, they are more likely to exhibit unusual behaviors. The more he tried not to be himself, the more he proved his guilt." The conclusion was reached. The 3 men in the 3 videos were in fact one and the same. He was a very cunning individual, aware of the existence of surveillance cameras, and had deliberately changed his appearance to deceive the authorities. This person was not only ruthless, but also very sly. The portrait of the killer, a murderer and a robber, was becoming clearer. While the identity of the mysterious withdrawer remained unknown, investigators returned to a detail noted from the beginning. Lily's missing property. Besides her bank card, her friends confirmed that Lily always carried 2 high-end mobile phones with her, a Samsung and an Apple iPhone. Both phones had disappeared with her. With modern technology, tracking a phone is not impossible. The digital forensics team began to trace the 2 devices through their IMEI numbers. They reviewed all transactions, account logins, and activity history of the 2 phones after June 8. It wasn't long before a significant discovery was made. The system recorded that Lily's Samsung phone had been reactivated and showed signs of a transaction at a well-known second-hand electronics market in Shenzhen. This was a complex market where thousands of used phones were bought and sold daily, making tracing difficult. However, the detectives were not deterred. They went to the market, worked with shop owners, and checked transaction ledgers. Using their professional methods, they found the stall that had purchased the Samsung phone. The shop owner, after being shown the photo and information, confirmed that he had bought the phone just 1 day after Lily went missing, on June 9th. When asked about the person who sold the phone, the shop owner provided a name and contact information. The person's name was Huang Shan, and one detail startled the investigators. Huang Shan was a native of Shantou. The name appeared once again like an invisible thread connecting the details of the case. Lily's body was found in the waters off Shantou. The person who sold her property, the Samsung phone, was a native of Shantou. This could not be a random coincidence. All trails, whether originating from Shenzhen or Zhuhai, ultimately pointed to a single location. Huang Shan, this mysterious man, immediately became the #1 suspect, the focus of the entire investigation. An emergency arrest warrant for Huang Shan was issued. Teams from the Shantou and Shenzhen police forces coordinated their actions. On July 7, 2013, just 8 days after the victim's body was discovered, the net closed in. Huang Shan was arrested at his residence in Shenzhen. When the investigators stormed in, Huang Shan did not resist. It seemed he knew this day would eventually come. Facing the investigators before the first questions were even asked, Huang Shan lowered his head and said with a bitter tone, "Since that day, I have been living in torment. I knew you would find me sooner or later. Getting caught like this is perhaps a form of liberation. I committed the crime. I was the one who killed her." At the police station, Huang Shan confessed to all his crimes. And the truth of the case was completely different from all previous theories about a complex love affair. It was simpler, but also much more brutal and terrifying. Huang Shan confessed that he and Lily were complete strangers. There was no personal grudge between them. They were just two people who crossed paths at a fateful moment. Huang Shan, a native of the Chaoyang district in Shantou, had moved to Shenzhen to make a living when he was very young. He worked as an unlicensed black taxi driver. His life, while not wealthy, was stable and peaceful. However, everything changed when Huang Shan fell into the trap of gambling. He lost more than he won, and his debts piled up. Creditors constantly hounded and threatened him. Pushed into a corner with no way out, a dark thought took root in Huang Shan's mind: to commit robbery and murder to pay off his debts. He had devised a very detailed and cruel plan. He rented a room in a remote area of the Kengzi district in Shenzhen solely for the purpose of committing the crime. He pre-purchased a knife, ropes, a large travel suitcase, and some mechanical tools to build the iron cage. He was ready for a crime, just waiting for an unlucky prey to appear, and that prey appeared on the afternoon of June 8th, 2013. That day, Lily had an appointment with a photographer at 3 p.m. for an artistic photo shoot. After shopping for clothes, she hastily hailed a cab on the side of the road. An unmarked taxi stopped. It was Huang Shan's car. Lily asked, "How much to the Tianhong shopping center?" Huang Shan replied, 100 yuan. To be on time, Lily got into the car without hesitation. She could not have known that she had just stepped into the last ride of her life. Sitting behind the wheel, Huang Shan observed Lily through the rearview mirror. He saw a young, stylishly dressed girl carrying bags of designer goods. In his mind, the criminal plan was set in motion. He did not drive to the shopping center as promised, but quietly changed direction, heading towards the deserted road leading to the rented room he had prepared. When the car entered a deserted stretch of road, Huang Shan suddenly stopped. He revealed his true demonic face. He pulled out the pre-prepared knife, held it to Lily's neck, and threatened her to remain silent. He searched her handbag, taking her cash, 2 mobile phones, and most importantly, her bank card. Under the threat of the knife, Lily was forced to reveal her PIN. Afterward, Huang Shan forced Lily into the criminal den. There, to silence the only witness and cover up his crime, he acted with extreme cruelty, giving the young girl no chance of survival. He knew that as long as Lily was alive, his crime would be exposed. To dispose of the evidence, he carried out the gruesome acts he had planned beforehand. He placed what was left of Lily into the suitcase and locked it tightly inside the iron cage. That very night, he drove over 400 kilometers back to his hometown of Shantou. He chose a secluded bridge over the upper reaches of the Rong River to throw the suitcase into the swift current, hoping it would sink to the bottom of the river and disappear forever. Huang Shan had done everything he could to conceal his crime. He calculated the disposal, he calculated the disguises for the cash withdrawals. He thought he had created the perfect crime. When he was arrested, he said that the suitcase floating to the surface was the will of heaven. Heaven's net is vast. Though its mesh is coarse, nothing slips through. There is no such thing as a perfect crime. No matter how intelligent or cunning criminals are, in the process of committing and concealing their crimes, they will always leave traces. This case is a clear testament that no matter how well a crime is covered up, it will eventually be brought to light. Justice may be delayed, but it is never denied, and he who sows the wind will reap the whirlwind. That is not fate. It is an inevitable law.